returning production for the 2024 Sun Belt football season. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Thanks very much for tuning in. We'll talk about who could be a surprise this year in the Sun Belt, and we'll go over the midweek baseball as well. I think Southern Miss had a big win over Ole Miss. We'll go over that. But earlier in the week, hold on a second. Bill Connolly came out from ESPN, came out with the returning production for all of the college football teams in FBS. He just tweeted it out. Updated 2024 returning production. This would have been on Sunday. Still some portal commits trickling in, but where do things stand in mid-May? Next SP Plus update will be next week will be the start of the preview series. Okay. And so I had to go down a couple of tweets underneath his and not quite figure out what was returning production. Now he says this. We'll get to what he said about this other stuff. But last year's top four in returning production were Kansas, Missouri, Florida State, and Michigan. Went from a combined 35-18 to 48-7. Last year's bottom four were Kent State, UAB, ECU, and Stanford. Went from 23-27 to 10-38. So it's a little bit of an indicator, if not a good indicator, what obviously the more production you have returning, the better chance you are in being good. Now, when I hear returning production, I think of players that were on that team and coming back. And so when I looked at it and, the first thing that caught my eye was the Cajuns are 15 and my Orange are 16. It's both at 72%. I'm like, hold on a second. They both lost quarterbacks. Cajuns lost a big-time running back. Where are we here? And he takes transfer portals into consideration. For example, Kyle McCord is going from Ohio State to Syracuse. That's going to help out with production. Okay, with returning production. So now let's go over the Sun Belt. I did my own list here. And so we can go up. I don't think it's any big surprise that Monroe has the least amount of production. We had the new coach on, Bryant Vincent, and he may have 3/4 of a roster turned over. So Monroe has 33% returning production. That is not a lot coming back. I don't think it's any surprise that next up is Troy. Troy's got 35 production, 35% coming back. And when you're losing a Gunnar Watson and a Kamani Vidal and unfortunately a Chris Lewis, you're going to lose a ton of production. And so where does that come from for Troy? All right, James Madison obviously loses the offensive player of the year, or the player of the year, not just the offensive player there. He was the player of the year, Jordan McLeod. He's going to Texas State, and that's why Texas State, I believe, is second in the Sun Belt on this list, if I can find it. Yeah, they are at 65% behind the Cajuns, 72%. Southern Miss is 44%. They got to replace Frank Gore. South Alabama may be one of those teams that may surprise in the wrong direction. They have a lot of holes to fill. Offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, running back. I mean, no Carter Bradley, no LaDainian Webb, no Colin Lacey. Defensively, they're missing a bunch of safeties. It's an issue. Coastal Carolina is at 48%, along with Georgia State. Now, Georgia State could be changing because they're getting a bunch of transfers in, what Del McGee has been doing as the new coach of the Panthers. But Coastal Carolina, they've been known this for a while, right? Grayson McCall has moved on, so you're going to have to replace that. Marshall's got to replace Rasheen Ali and Cam Fancher, among others, although I'm not sure how much production Cam had. He still played some last year. They're at 54%. ODU is at 55%. Georgia Southern breaking a new quarterback, 57%. No surprise, App State is at 63%. Joy Aguilar, although they have to find a running back. Arkansas State bringing in 65%. Can you be a surprise team if you're expected to do well? Texas State is at 65%, and the Cajuns, 72%. So despite losing a Jacob Caboti and a Zion Chris, two of their three quarterbacks that played are back. They certainly have a full running back room. They lose Peter LeBlanc and a tight end. So they didn't lose. I mean, Zion Chris is obviously a big loss. Yes. And some guys on defense are big loss and a couple of guys on the offensive line. But in terms of offensive production, the Cajuns are returning the most. I think that would probably surprise some people. So let's go over that list again. Leading the way for production being returned in 2024, the Cajuns are 72%. Texas State gets 65%. And as I mentioned before, because in this case, I make it with Syracuse. Kyle McCord is going from Ohio State to Syracuse. So Orange get his production, right? Texas State, despite losing two of their quarterbacks, gets the Jordan McLeod production. That gives them 65%, or else they would be in big trouble. Arkansas State, 65%. App State, 63%. Georgia Southern, 57%. ODU, 55%. Marshall, 54%. Georgia State, 48%, along with Coastal Carolina. South Alabama, 46%. Southern Miss, 44%. James Madison, 40%. Troy, 35%. And Monroe, 33%. It'd be interesting to know prior to the portal, so that's prior to 21, prior to the 21 season. I think the portal started after that season. What the average production was, what a good returning production was, right? I mean, how often, did you have a, 3-year starter? The reason South Alabama was supposed to be so good last year is because Carter Bradley was coming back and he had a ton of experience. You don't get that very often, right? Penix was that way with Washington because he played college football for so long. Usually you get the guys who don't stick around and move on. Bo Nix had the kind of season he had because he played and started college football forever. So it'd be interesting to know what that number is. Where is, because eventually somewhere along the way, right, before all the transfer stuff happened, you're going to have to do the replacing of the class, right? Like you got this junior, senior class. We can go to LSU for that. When they had, in 2013, when they had that great offense with a 3,000-yard passer, 1,500-yard rusher, Jeremy Hill. It was Mettenberger. It was OBJ. I can't remember the other receiver. Anyways, they had two 1,000 receivers, two 1,000-yard receivers, a 1,500-yard running back, and a 3,000-yard quarterback. It was a prolific offense. The problem was the 11 and 12 defense was all in the NFL. So they were breaking in a bunch of young guys. These guys didn't get a chance to play because the other guys were really good and all now playing in the league. So now in 2013, the offense is great. The defense can't stop anybody because they're just young. They're inexperienced. They were plenty talented because a bunch of them ended up in the NFL. I mean, we're talking, the Jamal Adams of the world, on those teams. So it'd be interesting to know what it was prior to 2021 and then now in the transfer portal, what a good number is. Obviously, 72% seems to be unheard of, right? I mean, let's get the top ones. We got to take a break here in a minute. So Iowa State is returning 86%, Stanford 85%, Oklahoma State 85%. That seems really high. But you do 134 teams and just go right in the middle. So what is it? Math off the top of my head, 62 or something like. No, it's 67. 67 is Liberty at 62%. So Liberty's at 62%. And that's a big difference when you have, let's see, what did we say? 67. Liberty was 62%. You move it up all the way to Texas State, which is just 65%. They're 49. They're 49th at 65%. So you can get, not that much of a difference in production and move up the list very quickly. He rounds them off, so I'm sure they are, to the decimal point where he's ranking them. So I'm be interesting to know what is a good number of returning production. You'd think over 50%, but somewhere along the way, I guess with transfer guys, you're going to have over 50% less than that. You probably have a new coach and have a lot of turnover. I mean, Southern Miss is trying to win, and they got 44% with that. That's going to be a little rough. All right. So having said the production, let's talk about for a minute who could surprise in the Sun Belt this year, both good and bad. All right. We will do that after I tell you about eBay Motors and Lafayette Travel. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all of the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. And Lafayette Travel. Escape to Lafayette, Louisiana, the happiest city in America, where every visit is uniquely seasoned with unforgettable experiences. Savor world-class cuisine, including mouth-watering boudin, savory gumbo, and piping hot crawfish, seasoned to perfection. Experience lively festivals that celebrate Lafayette's one-of-a-kind heritage, explore magnificent trails that lead you through our rich cultural history and breathtaking natural beauty. Discover the untouched purity of our cypress and Tupelo swamps, where you can paddle past nesting birds and sunbathing alligators. Immerse yourself in the vibrant rhythms of Cajun and Zydeco music that can be heard any night of the week. Whether your passion is for our rich cultural history, the bustling culinary scene, or the distinctive blend of Cajun and Zydeco music, the happiest city in America has something for everyone. Start planning your adventure at LafayetteTravel.com/season. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I thought, based on the production list from Bill Connolly from ESPN, let's have a quick conversation of who could be a surprise. And let me see if I can quickly, I do this much better visually if I get them in the right side of the conference. All right. And I can rank them with the production coming back. And so it's better visually for me. For example, now James Madison is last in the East with 40% production returning. All right. That's easier to see. Southern Miss is a little bit higher because they are fifth in the West compared to, the bottom of the entire conference. Okay. So again, we still think that Texas State and Arkansas State are the teams to beat in the West. All right. Texas State with a 65%, Arkansas State with 65%. We'll see if Jalen Raynor takes that next step. And if Jordan McLeod, pun intended, can transfer his talents properly from JMU to Texas State. Can the Cajuns be healthy? We talked it over with Mike Desimo. Some people use it as excuses or reasons. I'm more of a reasons guy. The Cajuns were very successful under Mark Hudspeth and Billy Napier because of the health. Hudspeth had a healthy offensive line, and Levi Lewis started every game in 3 years for Billy Napier. That's not been the case for Mike Desimo. If the Cajuns can remain healthy, they could be in good shape. And we'll see if the defense, we'll see how that defense is, because they got a new defensive coordinator and I don't think all that new moving parts, but they got a new defensive coordinator. They do have some new coaches, new offensive line coach. So we'll see that. So maybe the Cajuns could surprise. The only thing is, where are the Cajuns going to get picked? They got to be in the top 3, I would think, because I don't think South Alabama is going to be very good. I think South Alabama is going to take a dip. That's going to be an issue, I think, because that would be a good inclination of the turnover in talent. In this case, they transferred out. Colin Lacey went to Louisville. I think Yan Banks went to Ole Miss. Carter Bradley and LaDainian Webb used up their eligibility. And so it's going to be a little bit of a new team. Kane Womack went to Alabama. Major Applewhite's taking over. So there's a little bit of adjustment. Doesn't mean they can't be. Maybe they surprise on the high end. I think they may surprise on the low end. I think they may struggle this season. And they are coming to LSU. So that'll be fun if we get a chance to go to that football game, depending on the Cajuns' schedule. Southern Miss, I think, is probably going to be a little bit better than their 44% production returning. I think they'll have the quarterback situation. Probably should be right. Is it Tate Rodemaker from Florida State? He's probably going to be the guy, and we'll see if defensively they are ready to go. I think Troy is probably not going to surprise. We'll see. Reputation is there. You got a new coach. I think the coach will be fine, but he's got a lot of pieces to replace. It is what it is. Monroe could be a surprise team on the plus side. This is kind of like Texas State last year, except, G.J. Kinney was doing his stuff over at Incarnate Word. I'm not quite as familiar with Coach Vincent as I was maybe with a little bit with G.J. Kinney. But I'm excited to see Monroe because I think they are going to play tough. I think they're going to be gritty. I think, these teams they're going to know when they played ULM. So ULM may be better than we think. That could be one of the teams that surprise. Where they finish, I don't know, but that could be one of the surprising teams. All right. In the East, I would think App State is your leading contender, just based on Joey Aguilar returning, right? I mean, I think ODU's quarterback is returning. Marshall's got to, break in a new quarterback. Georgia State's breaking a new quarterback and a new coach. Coastal Carolina has their quarterback. James Madison's breaking in a new quarterback and a new coach. So App State is kind of the team, right? And it kind of feels like that's where we are. Like the three, I think Coastal Carolina will probably be better. We'll see where Georgia Southern is. We just had Clay Helton on. We'll see where they are in terms of their quarterback. He thinks they're very strong defensively. But App State returning 63%, Georgia Southern 57%. We'll see if ODU can take that next step. They kind of had a roller coaster ride, right? They beat the Cajuns, probably should have beaten Wake. They had a couple of games. I think they beat App, and then won on the last play of the game. See if ODU, and this is a big word that was thrown around. Kevin Foote doesn't like it, consistency. They need a little bit more consistency, especially from their offense. And I think Ricky Ronnie told us that the second year of the offense, people get more confidence. The wide receivers get more confident in the quarterback. So we'll see if that's the case. Georgia State is that's kind of a lot like Texas State. We just don't know what to expect yet. It's Del McGee's. I'm pretty sure it's Del McGee's first time as a head coach. So we'll see how that works out. I think Coastal Carolina will probably be better than most people think. We'll see where Coastal is picked. I think Tim Beck has an idea of what he wants, and I'm not sure he could accomplish that to begin with at the beginning of last season. And he adjusted, and they ended up winning a bowl game. James Madison will be interesting. I think Bob Chesney's a really good coach. I think they had some turnover. I think they're getting some good transfers in. It'll be interesting to see. So Bob Chesney could be a lot more like a G.J. Kinney because he is coming in as a head coach. Major Applewhite has a head coaching experience, right? I don't know if Jared Parker does. I don't think Jared Parker does. So Jared Parker and Del McGee are the same, whereas G.J. Kinney came in with head coaching experience, and Bob Chesney comes in with head coaching experience. So that could be really interesting. So let me see who the surprises are. I think Monroe could surprise a little bit. I don't think they're going to contend. And Southern Miss will probably surprise a little bit. The Cajuns, it'd be interesting to know where the Cajuns are picked before where they're going to surprise, because I still think they're top 3 in the West and could contend. We'll see if James Madison would be a surprise team. And obviously, if Georgia State is better than people think, then they would be a surprise team as well. So we shall see. It's certainly going to be a lot of fun. We only have, 2 months before, maybe about 9 weeks before Sunbelt Media Day. So it is just not that far away. All right, let's take a timeout. When we come back, we'll look at those midweek games. I think that Southern Miss had a big win on Tuesday night. We'll talk about that after I tell you about Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Those flash deals, you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. All-in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and you get those panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy. Game Time has the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's check a look at this midweek softball. Let me get Warren Nolan up here to see if that has changed a bit. So Ole Miss traveled to Southern Miss tonight. Southern Miss is wrapping up their season with a 4-game homestand. They get Texas State this weekend. All right, Southern Miss trying to be the 2 seed in the tournament, and they got Ole Miss tonight. Ole Miss was 24 coming into the action tonight. And Ole Miss has their strength of schedule is number 1 in the nation. Is that right? Goodness. All right. Well, Florida is 2, so those 2 teams had to play each other. Auburn is 4. And you're getting the picture here with the SEC. But Southern Miss came in at 29. They went up 3. Ole Miss didn't drop 24. That's where they were when the night started. But Southern Miss went up to 29. I tried to have a back and forth because I said it's a big game for both teams. I didn't think either team would fall that much if they lose. And obviously, if you win, if you're Southern Miss, you're in better shape. It's big because Southern Miss could beat Texas State 3 games in a row and see their RPI drop. They're coming in at 111. I think one win against Ole Miss is bigger than 3 wins against Texas State. I don't know if they value weekend games more than midweek games. I don't know if there's if it favors the weekend games, because midweek games, you're not, your aces are not going, you may be resting players, whatever the case may be. But that's a huge win for Southern Miss. They're now a top 30 ball club. That's awesome. Let's see if the Cajuns RPI went up because Southern Miss beat Ole Miss. I don't know. Cajuns went up 1. They're 38. And there you go. So that's a big win for a Southern Miss. They get Texas State. They can still tie the Cajuns as co-champions, but that would take a sweep of Texas State and South Alabama to sweep the Cajuns. All right, elsewhere in the Sun Belt, unfortunately, Gary Gilmore's final game against Clemson was canceled. That was canceled really early in the morning. Rain was coming, and they just didn't bother taking the bus ride over. Old Dominion at Richmond was also canceled. And James Madison at Virginia Tech was 2-1 in the second. They ended that one as well. Let me see what happened with Marshall. Took a ride to Ohio and beat the Bobcats 13-11. Reading Luke Creasy here. 24 runs, 21 combined hits, and the Herd escapes Athens with just its third road win of the year. Caden Kaiser homers twice and finishes with 8 RBI in the win. Have a night, Caden Kaiser. 8 runs batted in. So nice. So Marshall gets a win on the road. Let's see what else we had. Georgia Southern beats Jacksonville 13-5 as they rinsed that bad weekend series sweep to the Cajuns out of their mouths. That was ugly. South Alabama had a nice win. They hammer Southeastern 13-1 as South Alabama making their way over here to Lafayette. So they get their bats going. They got 4 in the first, 4 in the third, 13 runs on 13 base hits against Southeastern. So a nice win for South Alabama. Texas State is taking on McNeese in Lake Charles, as I guess they're making their way over to Hattiesburg. Texas State scored a run in the 10th, and they are currently leading 6-5. It is the bottom of the 10th, just getting underway for McNeese. This feels like a deja vu ball game for a little deja vu for Texas State with that Sunday game against Troy. So let's quickly, I don't necessarily go over the standings, but let me check it out on Warren Nolan where we are RPI-wise. And he's got a nice little standings thing that you can see. So the Cajuns moved up to 38. Southern Miss is 29. Mark Etheridge had a nice story on Troy, but at 48, I think they got work to do. Mark Etheridge had a good story and then on D1 baseball, but it's sitting at 48, third in the Sun Belt. That's going to be rough. All right. James Madison's at 47. Their RPI has bottomed out. App State is ahead of them in the standings, but at 61. Georgia Southern is at 73. Coastal Carolina is 30-21. They got an RPI of 36. Some of these RPIs are crazy. As Coastal Carolina is 13-14 in the Sun Belt. And that's about it. South Alabama, I guess, did go up a little bit. They are at 69. So what looked like it could be 3 or 5 teams, I mean, right now, and again, it depends who wins, right? I mean, if someone other than, I mean, Troy could win the tournament easily, all right? So they would get in, obviously. But RPI-wise, right now, you're looking at the Cajuns and Southern Miss. I'm certainly not feeling confident if I'm Troy at 48. James Madison at 47. Yeah. Oh, you get Coastal Carolina. I'm sorry. Coastal Carolina will probably get in at 36, we think. But what happens if they lose a couple on the road against Marshall? And they really haven't played well down the stretch at all. So, like where the Cajuns are now, 38. Take 2 out of 3 from South Alabama. Easier said than done. Be in those mid-30s, win a game or 2 in the Sun Belt, and you're all set. Again, the idea is to avoid having to win the tournament. I think Troy, outside of the Cajun, Southern Miss, and Coastal Carolina right now, I think everybody has to win. I'm not thinking that James Madison is in. I'm thinking that Troy is not in right now. We'll see what they do coming out with the brackets later this week. But right now you got 3 Sun Belt teams that in. I think that's great, but it was looking like it could be 5 or maybe more, and it just hasn't turned out that way. Not yet. Still got this weekend and still got the tournament to go. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. We continue to get, more and more subscriptions. Really appreciate that. Clay Helton was outstanding in yesterday's episode and hope you enjoyed this one. The budgets came out for the Sunbelt athletic departments. We'll go over that. tomorrow. And yes, my understanding is that there would be no math, but I like that kind of math. So we will do that for the next episode. It is, and then we'll recap. Well, no, everything starts on Thursday. So we'll have another episode for Thursday morning. And then we'll recap the Thursday games for Friday's episode. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. You've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Have a great Wednesday, everybody, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.